we're projecting to do just under 3 million.
That's insane.
Every year, we beat our projections by about 300%.
Man.
Instagram's been a huge thing for us. Once we meet on site, we know 80% of the time we're closing the deal. Taking that leap is a scary proposition. I really want to see, can I take this to a 20, 30, 40, $50 million company?
On this episode, we're here with Anthony, who started an outdoor office building company that now generates more than $1 million a year. Anthony's going to share his strategies to manufacturing, delivering office spaces, finding clients, marketing, designing all these wonderful, beautiful spaces, and the tools you guys need to start a successful manufacturing company. All right, well, we're here at the Portland Expo. Let's go talk to Anthony about all things manufacturing and make sure you guys succeed. This is the man. How you doing, Anthony?
Nice.
Paul,
very nice to meet you.
Let's dive into this interview.
Absolutely.
Tell us when and why you started Outdoor Office.
Pretty simple. I was a home inspector by trade, needed a place to work from home, much like people do today, and one thing led to another and created a business out of it. Being a home inspector, I was working on my kitchen table. I did that for about 1.5 years. Needed something quiet. I have 2 boys at home and started looking around, couldn't find a shed that works for me, so I decided to build one for myself, and my wife took some pictures, and there you have it, yeah.
So the office inside the house didn't work for you?
Well, my office was a kitchen table, so we didn't have anywhere to eat for 1.5 years, so that made her pushing me outside a little bit easier.
Your business took off like a wildfire during the pandemic. What did you do to adjust for that extra demand? How did you scale, and what changes did you make?
Yeah, it was almost literally overnight. I mean, within 2 weeks, we went from 4 orders to 18. Scalability is a challenge, absolutely. I don't know if we were ever prepared for it. So finding new space was a priority and has been a priority. Right away, one of the first things we had to do was start getting some people on board. You know, we started out 2, 3 people, and you know, even today we don't have enough. But that's a whole nother issue, I think. That's probably step 2, 3, and 4. We finally feel we've solved step 1 by moving into our new facility. You know, you can maybe get more space, but if you don't have the people to match up to that, right? Or I could get more people, but I don't have the space to put them. Or I can try to manufacture faster, but I have nowhere to store our supplies. So everything ultimately always came down to finding the space to get everything in one spot. Then from there, being able to push forward and really meet the demand as far as speed, timeliness, and production.
Let's talk numbers real quick. 2020, 21, 22. What did you do? What did you project?
So 2020, we did just over 500,000. It was kind of a growing year. 15 units.
Okay.
2021, we finished just over 1.2 million.
That's a good
that
jump.
was 26 units. So you can see the price increase of the buildings themselves.
That's insane.
2022, right now, we're projecting to do just under 3 million. That's with our current projections. As I stand here every day, that projection seems to climb.
Yeah.
So
hopefully
I'm not one to necessarily be like, oh, I want to get to this point. I live more in the reality of where I think we're going to be. And that reality has been shattered every year.
As a home inspector, you're a one-man team. Now that you have a company that does more than $1 million, you've got a team. So what skills did you feel like you needed to learn to be an effective team leader, owner, etc.?
Yeah, so kind of going back, I think looking at your individual raid, what worked, what didn't. I think being smart about understanding, putting yourself in other people's shoes, what they're looking for, how to drive them individually. I think as a business, we needed to grow, so I needed to understand my skill set can only take me so far. I need to start replacing what I'm good at with other people, what they're good at, so that I can focus more about what my job's going to be. So the transition has been difficult for sure. I think any business owner who starts out on their own, I think you kind of want to not give up as much control. Some people naturally, they just want to give it up right away. That's not my style. So we have 5 people right now. We're looking at tripling that basically in the next 3 months.
Let's talk about your first customer. And for somebody who is starting out in a manufacturing business, doesn't have a huge budget for advertising, what can they do to get their first customers?
Use whatever resource you can find. So our first customer was actually through our church directory, where we just listed our business name, and someone saw Outdoor Office and they said, oh, well, I actually need a space to work. There you go. And that was our first paid customer we ever had. Instagram's been a huge thing for us. So social media, posting pictures of just the process. People love to kind of see that, and it gives them some insight on what it is and kind kind of how you do it. That alone, honestly, we probably ran our first year and a half just off social media.
Did you do any campaigns or like hashtag this, that to sort of boost your posts? Or
no, we created a hashtag called Build Your Space, which is kind of our logo, it's our motto. And that kind of started out really just as a thought to be like, you know, well, what if we could build your space for you? So that's actually our online builder tool site too as well. It's called Build Your Space, and there you go.
Perfect. Walk us through the basic must-have equipment from manufacturing, whatever you're doing. Well, let's skip the heavy stuff.
Yeah. I mean, for us, you know, a lot of it's going to be your typical construction tools.
Okay.
You know, we have a lot of saws, larger saws, table saws. We can pump out buildings. So a lot of what we're doing is we're pre-manufacturing walls, and then we'll be able to put them together. So you're going to have your nailing equipment, your compressors. You know, a lot of the big general things. The thing is, we just have more of them.
How many employees do you have, and on average, what do you pay them when you look to hire more?
Yeah, so we have 5 current full-time right now. We're going to be offering more of our office staff and more manufacturing leads, project managers, stuff like that. Our average person right now is making between 28 and 35 an hour. I think that will probably start to escalate sooner than later. I think a lot of it is because just I need to find right people, and if you find the right people, you pay them.
That's right. What were the biggest challenges when you were faced with, you know, the extra demand and the fast growth?
2 things. 1, scaling. I think that's always been a big problem. And then 2 is tracking everybody. You know, going from maybe 5 to 10 people a month to 60 people a month.
Okay.
It drastically changes our ability to monitor who's being followed up on. And then on top of all that is who's actually in our queue, who's in the pipeline.
Have you found a solution, or are you still struggling with that same issue?
I think it's an ongoing struggle. I think anybody's always going to kind of look into it and figure out ways to be more efficient. I would say our biggest step, along with our builder tool, part of that requirement was to be able to have a lead tracking system inside of that. Okay,
well, before you share what that is, why don't we wait for later on in the video and share that with you guys. So keep watching. Why don't we just do a quick walk around? What does this unit cost, and what are the highlights that you want to point to us?
Yeah, so in this build itself, this is going to be more of our standard products. You know, it's going to be an off-the-shelf in a sense.
Gotcha.
Something like this, all in, a 10 by 12 is going to run you around a $40,000 mark. And that includes your foundations, your permitting, and all of that included. So in this one, we have a few extra highlights. You know, we have our shiplap wall. That's always kind of a nice addition.
It looks great, by the way.
Yeah, it's a nice little feel. It gives it a little more of a warm touch, I think. Breaks up the drywall. Obviously, we have our pine tongue and groove ceiling as well. We leave it raw because I just frankly like the look of wood. I think it also provides a little bit more of that natural balance between the floor and the ceiling. Kind of ties everything together.
And you don't really need to stain it too, because it's just a nice.
No, absolutely. You can leave it as is. I just prefer the like wood, and I like how it smells too. It kind of gives it a nice fresh cut. But yeah, inside here, everything comes standard with wall heat. Our most popular upgrade is actually a ductless mini split system, so that will include AC. It's going to mount on your wall much like the TV or much like a picture frame will, so that kind of gives you that nice option for in the hot summers around here at least.
Yeah, it's going to get hot in here.
Yeah, so everything is included though. Everything you see, the flooring, we have a selection of flooring choices, all the trim, window wraps, baseboards, windows, these are all standard. The French doors are all standard. So these are all things that you can kind of pick and plug and play of what makes sense for you.
But a customer or client can basically ask for anything and you will deliver essentially in terms of the build.
Yeah, we're able to pick and choose. We've had everything from clients who are running their business out of it, from home psychologists who we built a lobby and then they've had their office on the other end of a wall in the interior. We've had people build basically like a little B&B for themselves. And I think our most popular is a combination of office slash workout room. You know, in this interior setup, it's more relaxing, but yeah, people working out from home has been a popular choice too.
Before you advertised, how many quotes were you getting per year, and how many of those convert to business, and what do you expect that to be for 2022 that you're advertising now?
Yeah, I think we did just over 55 quotes. We probably contacted 75 to 80 people in total, converted into about 55 quotes. We would sell about 80% of those. So last year we sold 41 builds in total.
What would you think that would be for 2022? Now that you're advertising even more?
Now that we have the builder tool alone, it's the 3rd week of February. I have 41 quotes already.
Oh, wow.
We've got $1 million in quotes sitting in my inbox as I sit here right now that I haven't even contacted.
And then how long have you been here at the convention so far?
4 hours.
4 hours, and you've got how many quotes? So the $8,000 investment into parking here for 4 days is well worth it.
Yeah, it's turning around very quickly.
handles your website as well?
So right now it's myself. You're looking at the internet and web team, which is, I wouldn't say the strongest by any stretch, but that is in process for 2022 as well. We're going to be revamping our site to bring it more modern with how our buildings feel. A lot of it originally, I'll be totally blunt, it was just go to Wix.com and cost me 20 bucks, and what you see today is what I had. Sometimes you just have to do what you have to do to get the buildings going and then worry about the back end stuff. But
exactly, yeah. Well, if you guys need help with your website, our new sponsor, Fiverr, has incredible website designers and developers. They have graphic designers and everything you need to create the right brand and the perfect website. They're going to give our viewers 10% off, so make sure you click the link in the description below and use the code UpFlip10. So you have a fixed build, and then you also do customs. Walk me through the advantage or why you have that, and then where are the profits higher?
Yeah, so good question. On the custom side of things, those are generally one-offs. Takes more time invested on our end, time invested on the client's end. So profitability is going to be slightly lower, but it's going to be more of a marketable tool. Our manufacturing side, which is kind of what you see behind us here, allows us to build different sizes, different variants with different layouts, but we're all predetermined. So as a client, you're able to kind of pick and choose what you want. All we have to do is pull stuff out of our warehouse and assemble it much faster, equals higher income on the back end.
So where are your profit margins numbers-wise on the fixed versus custom? What's your target?
Yeah, our fixed build used to be somewhere around 40%.
Okay.
The downside is market pricing's changed a lot, so we're hovering right around 28% profitability.
Right.
On the custom side, you're somewhere around 20 to 25 would be our best estimate.
Gotcha. Specifically, what are you doing to handle all the leads and then convert them into clients?
One, just having a consolidated space to have the leads. You know, what used to be pen and paper now is all in a computer-generated system. So we're debating between a couple different software tools. The builder tool is where it's kind of funneling now, but that only kind of does one step. It just kind of puts them in a spot. The follow-up is where I really want to start going into. So we're looking into some new software systems that will kind of help not only myself, but anyone who's going to be on our sales team moving forward. They'll be able to have that information as well.
So that's for the future, but what are you doing now specifically, Anthony?
Yeah, so what we're doing right now is basically within a 48-hour policy is to follow up with them directly. At this point, they've already built a quote, so we already know they want it. They already know what their design is. Now it's about taking that next step, which for us is meeting them on site. Once we meet on site, we know 80% of the time we're closing the deal.
On site, they show up to your warehouse. Is that what you mean?
No, we actually show up to their home.
I see.
Yeah, so we need to take measurements, photos. We need to make sure their design is going to fit in their space.
So for what you're doing specifically, you know, manufacturing in general, you don't need to do much sales because, like you said, once they create that space, they pretty much want it already. Yeah,
we kind of know that by the time they've done their research, they've already kind of found us. And by the time they give us a call or they use that builder tool, most of the time they already know they want this thing.
They want it.
Now it's a matter of will the design and will the price match up to what they're looking for. And if they do, it's kind of a perfect marriage.
The Shed View Builder tool on your website is quite a neat feature.
Yeah.
Talk to us about why that's important in your business and how that changes the interaction with the customer.
Yeah, before, I think what a lot of people don't understand is it was all myself or someone from my crew who would have to interact from the very beginning. So you're talking 9, 10, 12 hours of work just to get a quote pushed out the door.
That's a lot.
All that's free of cost. You know, for us or to our clients, we just view that as part of the service, in the hopes that they're still going to sign in the end and that you get the design right. So we were trying to figure out a way to consolidate that down, and that's where our Shed tool has allowed us to allow the client in one place to do all of those things without interaction. It's more freedom, it's less pressure, they don't feel like they have to be committed one way or the other. But what we find is the people who use it, they're adding more things than they would have if I was sitting there saying, well, I would recommend this. And people look at dollars and cents. So the option was kind of like building a car online. You're able to add all those little features, and inevitably it's easier to sell those if I'm not having to do anything. They just plug it in and say, well, I want that, I want that, I want that. And in the end, they have a bigger price than they would have if I would have done it myself.
Let's check out the outside.
Yeah, absolutely.
The pitched roof, is that similar for all designs, or do you do
Yeah,
flat as
so
well,
this is going to be our standard. This is its simplicity, frankly. The peak style roof has been less popular over the years, even though most of the main homes have it. I think a lot of people like the fact that here you can have a bigger set of windows, door framing, and all that. I think they like that because most people aren't looking at the back anyways. So I think that's what's provided there. Again, on the exteriors, we use all a fiber cement product, which is a really nice, durable product. It works in a lot of environments. That's what people are going to find on their main house, so that's what you should have here.
And power, can you show us kind of
absolutely. Yeah,
what
we'll head
the
over here.
like?
Yeah, so obviously on the interior as well, you're going to have all the plugs just like your main house would. You have an exterior plug on its own dedicated outlet, so a lot of people like to hook up barbecues, they like to hook up lights on the outside, power different things here. So part of our process, we've been more or less stealing pages to try to figure out what works. We used to originally hardwire the buildings in, but as a portable building, it doesn't make sense to have something that's hard and stationary, right? So for us, we started to use the RV world, which is here's a 30 amp RV plug twist lock, and that's how we handle that system right there. So we have your main panel on the backside, just like you would in your house, but it's all powered right through here, and we just connect that back into the main home.
So what's your standard of practice for the builds, right? Can you walk us through the process of hearing from the customer first to the finished build when it's installed?
Yeah, so for us, a lot of it's going to come from the builder tool and or a quote that's a custom side. So that will help generate a lot of what it is that we're going to need as far as materials. Going through, walking through that, we have a little meeting that says, hey, here's our next steps for that particular project. A lot of it is the checks and balances. Each stage has its process that needs to go through. We check that off. We sign it off on the list through our build sheets that we create. And then from there, as we kind of keep generating each build, we kind of keep improving that process.
What are you subbing out? Like the delivery process, is that your trucks, your guys, or is that something else you hire?
Yeah, I mean, fair question. I think for us, what makes us different is we do everything in-house, because as a client, I don't want them to be a general contractor or to question every day, well, whose company is this showing up on my doorstep? So knowing that it's always an outdoor office employee who's going to be there or is working on it, I think sets us apart.
For sure.
As far as the delivery go, well, I don't own multiple cranes, nor do I want to. So that's how we deliver a lot of our buildings. So getting a crane company to do that for us, I think helps streamline that process. It is more expensive, but I think that's just something that's kind of built into the price.
What's the cost to deliver it?
On average, it's about $1,000 an hour. We average about 3 to 4 hour time frame.
Wow, so a couple grand at least for delivery.
It's expensive quick.
Wow, okay. What else have you learned when it comes to, getting these waves of demands in terms of, as a business owner watching right now, to be prepared, to be able to scale quickly if you need to, instead of just shutting doors? I think one of the lessons we've learned is kind of always have something in reserve just in case you have to move quick, right? I think for us, we have no debt, we have no loans, we have anything. We've been a cash business. So money that comes in, we reinvest it. I see.
So the hard part's been is that when you have this flood of orders that roll in, you don't even have the materials yet to meet those orders. So then you have to buy the materials, and then you got to figure out
in bulk and storage.
Yeah.
Do you do that, Anthony?
Yeah, so we do that now for sure. We used to have to do it in mid-level scale, I guess, where our demand has always been higher than what we can produce. I think now what we're trying to do is we can take our backlog back and get us down to a much more manageable 4-week time frame. And I think that's where we're really going to find our sweet spot, where a order comes in, we can meet that demand and get it out, which means income comes in faster at a much better rate.
Anthony, what are your major competitors at this point, and what makes Outdoor Office stand out from the rest?
Yeah, our biggest competitors are actually online kit builders. So they're in a few different states around the West. We're the only ones that I know of currently who do this in person, in a warehouse, and build it completed as you see it. Most everyone else will build it in a kit. They'll ship you the kit. It arrives on your driveway, and it's up to you to put it together. Yeah.
Not everyone's good with that. And you're different in what way?
So from beginning to end, we handle everything. So we're a one-stop shop. So from your foundation to your planning to your design, all of that's included on the front end. Then the actual manufacturing, obviously, and then the delivery is all handled as well. So we handle your permitting, your electrical, all those kind of things that are entailed into the whole project. We're able to combine all that into one service.
Seems like an obvious thing that other companies should probably implement. I'm wondering what made you go that direction, be like, you know what, we'll do A to Z.
Yeah.
Is it just to stand out, or did you see a benefit in that? I mean, what else can you highlight on?
Yeah, so for me, originally going back to how it all started, those were the hiccups that I found. I did not want to have my clients go through the same process that I did. Most people don't want to be a general contractor. They just want the product. You know, I use the joke, they don't want the labor pains, they want the baby. So I figured out a way to deliver the baby in a much more efficient way.
Nice.
Yeah.
Tell us how you found your new space. 26,000 square feet, that's no joke. What factors were involved in you deciding for that particular location and so on?
So our space before this was 5,000 square feet, so obviously making a big leap. You know, I don't think we had intended to do that. I think originally we were hovering around that 15,000 mark and it just wasn't available. So we said, are we willing to take that bigger leap? And said, okay, let's go for it.
So what are you paying for the space now, and anything else that's important you can share?
Yeah, so right now we're paying just under 18,000 a month. That will escalate over a 5-year stretch to just under 22,000. Wow. So that is a large leap considering we were paying 3,500 a month in our prior space.
Wow. And
so
is that one of the biggest overheads per month?
Currently, yeah. I think as we add people, labor will start to up, you know, that will give a big uptick there. But yeah, as far as our warehouse goes, we knew that what we do, our space required more. And it's just kind of, I think, how our cost of doing business is, where maybe we save in other areas like marketing and advertising. Some people are real heavy in that. We found we don't have to be as heavy in that. So we'll really redirect that into actually the business, which is useful space.
Let's talk about after-build support. I buy you your office space and something breaks. What do you provide as far as support afterwards, warranty?
Yeah, so we have a 1-year build warranty. So almost all of our materials that we use, almost all of them have a minimum 25-year warranty on them. So from our siding to our roofing to our flooring, all of these things are all going to be under the manufacturer warranty, which is great. So we make sure we tell people that, and we can be a facilitator between that. But as far as like the build, the structure, the foundation, anything goes wrong, if there's a leak, we'll certainly cover a lot of that for up to a year, which is standard in most building practices.
Okay, have you had like a couple scenarios where things just hit the fan and you have to really own up to it?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, there's been a couple times, especially when we do like interior closets, you know, like a client pulled it too hard and they literally ripped the closet door right off. Okay. You know, and then we'll get a call like, oh, well, you know, rather than arguing with them, just fix it. It's really very inexpensive, and they're going to remember that, and they're going to go tell their friends, oh yeah, I totally screwed up, or maybe it did fall off, I don't know.
Absolutely.
But it's kind of one of those that, you know, that kind of stuff I think goes a long ways.
So being an inspector for many years, how has that experience helped you start Outdoor Office? Can you share anything in terms of manufacturing and kind of seeing the build process? Has that helped you in some way?
100%. Being an inspector for the state of Oregon, doing real estate inspections, you find a lot of what not to do, frankly. You see a lot of carpenters, you see a lot of builds of things that have gone wrong as a result of either poor construction or poor materials. So what we try to do is start right from the get-go, say, look, we're going to do things the way they're supposed to be done. So meaning as far as your construction of the actual build itself to the materials we're using. So, you know, building it like a main home is how we feel you should have a outdoor space. You want it to last, you want the value out of it. You can go get a shed and it will probably fall apart in 7 to 10 years. These are built for 30, 40, 50 years.
Wow. Any tips, advice on finding talented employees? I know that's an issue for all businesses right now, especially, but what's the experience been for you?
Yeah, I think finding people with the right personality who can fit into the team environment. I think training people, most obviously there's going to be your basic requirements, but we have different levels of hiring. You know, we have apprentice levels, we have very high-end carpenter levels, finished people, and then we've got very technical jobs, right? So I think when you get into those positions and you're trying to find that specific person, I think you just pay them what they deserve, and I think they'll be appreciative of that, but that only takes it so far. You really have to be a company that's going to design yourself around them and their position and their capabilities. And I think being able to position ourselves that allow them to succeed, have input, allow them to continue to grow so it doesn't become stagnant. And I think as a company, it's a very dynamic company as far as our agility to move and position ourselves where we need to go. Having people that are on board with that makes a big difference.
Absolutely. What is the most challenging thing for you, Anthony, right now as a business leader? You know, we've gone through some tumultuous times and looks like it's not over yet, unfortunately. But what are you struggling with right now?
Yeah, well, the good news is every time, as far as our business, there's a economy downturn or a pandemic downturn, we seem to increase in business. The downside of that is every time there's an increase in business, we're trying to keep up with that. So either having an influx of money, since we don't have any loans or we don't have any investors, you know, sometimes it can be difficult to get the materials we need to meet the demand. So that is for sure a big challenge. Running on cash, which is great. The downside is that you limit yourself sometimes, and I think if we really want to take that really next step, I think maybe I need to be more open to having outside investment into the business.
Absolutely. That'll help with scalability. Guys, if you're struggling with something, we'd love to hear from you. Comment below. What are you struggling with as a business leader in these times? Let's talk about advertising. You mentioned that you never spent a penny on advertising, but you just recently started to. So why do you think it's a good time, and what made you make that decision?
Yeah, I think if you're going to take that next step, the next evolution of a business, taking it, and we talked about, you know, from small time, if you will, to medium time or even big time, I think you have to start announcing to the world what it is that you do. I think we've gotten away with it because so many people just were desperate to have an outdoor office or an outdoor space, and it just so happens to be our name is Outdoor Office. But I think for a lot of it is that we really want to try to test the waters to see how far we can take this. And if we've done this, we've done over $1 million a year with no advertising and marketing. What happens when we turn that switch on? 2022, we're looking at just around $3 million, just shy. That's with our projections. Now, to be fair, every year we've beat our projections by about 300%.
Man, okay.
So, you know, what that means, I don't know yet, but we'll find out.
We'll have to do a follow-up with you.
Yeah.
All right, a quick blitz. Thanks, you guys, for submitting your questions. Anthony, let's just jump into it. What's your favorite business book?
Winning the War in Your Mind.
Winning the War in Your Mind. Okay,
Yeah.
I got to check that one out. What car do you drive?
Toyota Tundra.
Now at this stage of success, what advice would you give your younger self?
Be patient.
When you're not running a business, what would we find you doing?
On a golf course.
Okay. If you could win a lottery today and earn a fortune for the lifetime, would you give up this business today?
Absolutely not. I would invest in it.
All right. This is Deletti asking you how you build trust with customers when your products are new to the market.
Tell your story, give them your background. People will invest in you probably before the product.
Awesome. And then last question from WC. Who are your primary customers and how do you find them? And is it people with homes without an office that buy an office? That's what interests me as well.
People who are now working from home who were forced into it. I would say a lot of people now are really trying to find a solution without having to move.
You mentioned something in terms of, is this a side hustle or is this an actual business that you're creating and building?
Yeah.
What can you say on that note? How do you go from, yes, it's a side hustle, man, to a $10, $20, $30 million business?
Yeah, I think anyone who starts a small business, there's always a bit of a wild card with them in their personality. I think you got to be a risk taker no matter what. I think in my situation personally, you know, being a home inspector who was very successful, I was doing over 200 inspections a year, and, you know, I'd made a great living by myself. You know, I think if you're going to really kind of take your risk level and assess where you really want to go, sometimes you're going to have to take that leap, you know, and I think taking that leap is a scary proposition. Absolutely. No matter if it's a small leap or it's a big leap, the numbers in percentage-wise still probably equal the same thing inside of you. Right. And I think for us, you know, I really want to see, can I take this to a 20, 30, 40, $50 million company? I'm never going to do that by sitting on the sideline and continuing down the path we are. Now, there's nothing wrong with staying, but that's not where I want to be.
We want you guys to take that leap. It's well worth it. What else are you doing to create an exceptional customer experience?
Yeah, I think what's unique about our business is we get to work one-on-one with our clients. In a retail setting, you don't have to get a lot to know about their backgrounds, their personal things, what they're using it for. We directly ask them because it's going to help us in our design, in our manufacturing of it. But not only that, it's going to take it one step further to where if they're using it like a home gym, so do we need to reinforce the floor if they're doing weights? Are we going to need to have extra insulation or soundproofing if they're going to be a podcaster or if they're going to be a musician, right? So all these little things we've learned over the years, we try to implant that back into our current clients so then they feel, hey, this is really individual and personal for me. And I think that's what they love. They fall in love with the idea that this is my space.
So you've been featured in some publications, Shed Builder Magazine, some other one as well. Did they come to you or did you seek them out, and how did that help your business?
Yeah, I mean, oddly, I think a lot of people through social media, they've seen some posts, and either a producer or an editor or someone along the line said, you know, hey, would you like to do a story? Sure, why not? You know, so some of those stories, the first one we did was in Home and Garden magazine. We were actually the centerfold picture for it.
Oh, wow.
Didn't even know they knew existed, and that was very early in our process. And then from there, it sort of spurred into the next one and said, hey, we saw this, and kind of one thing led to another. You know, I think if you're going to tell people, you know, hey, here's our story, don't be afraid to put it out there.
Did it help your business? Did it bring new customers?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was one when we were the cover story for a couple of them. I think people do read that. I'm always questioning, is this actually legitimate or not? But I think a lot of people, what they've done is they'll open up, they'll read it, they'll save it. You know, even in our local paper, there was a paper that we did 3 years ago. I still hear about this article today. Oh, I read your story in this and we fell in love with it, and it was a local family business. And I'm amazed at how much we generate just from those at alone. You know, it doesn't take a whole lot, I think.
In terms of licenses, requirements that you need to be a manufacturing company?
Yeah.
What can you share on that? Is it pretty basic, or what else stands out?
Yeah, I mean, in Oregon, you know, we do have some pretty strict laws as far as having your licensing, bonding, insurance requirements. Okay. That's going to be it's the same in a general contractor in most industries. Around here, I have an advantage because I also have a home inspection license, which gives me even more in-depth studies of how things are put together, the way things are supposed to be. So my requirements for me as a business actually benefit me to have more than the standard person maybe would.
But like anyone with a manufacturing business or who wants to start, you're saying other than typical licenses that are kind of the same throughout the states, there's nothing else to it, right? You
know, each state's going to be a little different here and there, generally speaking. But as far as us doing our manufacturing side, we're still considered a construction business.
I see, okay.
So, you know, there hasn't been any real big sway in as far as that goes. We don't really operate any real heavy equipment or machinery. We still do things in a semi-traditional way, but our package and how we put it all together is going to be different.
You're not national yet.
No.
Do you have plans to go national?
We've had a lot of demand. You know, I would say at least once a week I get calls from Florida, New Jersey, Texas, Louisiana, you know, California. So
what's the struggle there?
I think a lot of it is just the fact to ship a building fully completed is going to cost you $20,000, you know? So I think what we're actually looking at doing is keeping our warehouse here and then building satellite locations where we can make our own kit, ship our kit to our local facility, be the local provider for that area, and then all they have to do is do the finishing touches. I think that would go a long ways where we can still be your local you know, outdoor office.
Awesome. Well, Anthony, I enjoyed it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
You bet.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this incredible episode with Anthony, the owner of Outdoor Office. What a cool product. It's beautiful, well made. Hope you guys enjoyed it and learned a lot about manufacturing. We appreciate your support. Take a second to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so that you don't miss any of our videos. Thank you for watching.